Okay guys, I want to talk to you today about the Pro R doors. The factory door is a plastic door, has a molded frame on the inside. A lot of companies will make a skin to go on this frame. So it's kind of a goofy skin on top of a goofy frame. At TMW Offroad we make a full tube frame with a nice formed aluminum skin to replace this door and to make your Pro R and Pro, fits all the Pros from the Pro XP, Pro R and Turbo R. So today we're going to show you how to install those doors and make your Pro R amazing. We use the T40 Torx bolt to loosen this bolt here. Sometimes it'll come out and sometimes it'll stay in the hole. This one decided to stay in the hole, which is fine. It'll come loose when we separate the panel from the frame. We're going to use a 8mm socket to remove the outer piece of the latch. Then we're going to use a T30 to remove these two smaller Torx bolts that hold the remaining piece of the factory latch into the frame. And you use your fingers to separate the door from the frame a little bit and slide the rear latch piece out of position. This way you don't have to take the whole door completely apart and have the frame and all the pieces all over your garage. It just saves you a little bit of work. The upper hinge mount, we leave this in place. We leave these two gold bolts fastened. We just remove this one snap ring and we're going to pop the pin straight out. That's going to allow us to drill the hinge from the top straight down with the 5/16 drill bit to make room for the bigger hinge bolt so we can tighten up the looseness of the doors. Unfortunately on the lower one down here we have to remove the hinge mount and it kind of sucks. Using a 13mm short socket on this ratchet, and we were able to reach in there and remove it without taking the seat out. We did remove the two plastic body pins that hold that little felt cover in place. So now that the bottom hinge is loose and the top pin, we have to kind of tap it out because it is a press fit. You can see right here this pin that we knocked out, the little knurls that hold it in. It's a simple press fit, so you just tap it with a hammer and she comes out. So we drilled this upper bracket on the car. You saw we removed the lower one from the car. If you don't have a vise to hold the lower bracket to drill it, you can remove these two bolts and bolt your lower bracket into the upper position and use it to hold it while you drill it. Some people just don't have a vise, and so we're trying to figure out a way to make it easy for them to drill it safely. That's the easiest thing we come up with, is just take those two bolts out, bolt your lower bracket in the upper position and drill it out, and then put it back on the lower position. You can see this. We marked the skin here with some masking tape to kind of give us a easier line for installing the foam tape. So you can see where we've marked it. We don't need to mark the upper edge because we just run foam all along that upper edge. The tube runs all along that upper edge. The reason we only marked it in a couple spots like this is the frame doesn't touch the skin and along the whole surface of the panel, so you don't need to put foam everywhere, and we'll show you that. Okay, so we've installed the foam. You can see we used the tape as our guide for the foam. We did cut the edges with the razor blade. You do need to make sure you don't force the razor blade into the powder, just lightly cut. You can see this top edge right here. We just left it about 1/8 of an inch and ran the foam all the way across that top edge. And now we're ready to install every one of our door kits for the Pro or the Pro R or the Turbo R. You're going to get one of these bags labeled XP Pro 2 Door. And in that bag you'll have your door skin bolts, quarter 20. You'll have the nuts for those door skin. So these are used to connect the door skin to the frame. These are your hinge, Delrin machined hinge spacers that go into the frame as you install the frame into the factory brackets. These 5/16 bolts will replace those snap ring hinge pins that we removed with these lock nuts and these washers. So that'll give you the ability to tighten up the hinge and get rid of any excess noise or rattling. We got our door frame installed to our door skin. All the quarter 20 bolts are tight. You can see we slid that door bag between the frame and the skin. And now we're going to install the latch. You can slide the latch in anytime. You can put it in before you put the frame on if you want. You can slide it in while the frame and skin are bolted together. We are using the factory hardware and reinstalling that to secure this latch. Okay, we reinstalled the factory bolts that hold the latch in place with our 13mm socket. Used our T30 to reinstall these Torx bolts. But the one thing that you don't reinstall is this guy here, and these bushings right here just go into the top of the hinge like this. So you put one on top, one on bottom. Our factory hinge we reinstall before we put the door on the car. This allows us to tighten up the bolt and snug it up without the plastic being in the way. The upper one we left on the car. Slid the upper hinge mount into the factory hinge, dropped the bolt in, pushed it up from the bottom because you can't install the top bolt from the top. You have to push it upside down from the bottom. But that allows the door to just stay in place while we secure the lower hinge mount. If you guys are fighting this upper bolt going in upside down all the way through the hinge mount, make sure all your bolts are loose on the factory frame. It allows it to flex enough for you to push that bolt straight up into that tab. So spend some time adjusting your hinges. Loosen the gold bolts and it'll let you slide the door forward, backward, and you can get the door hinging properly and latching properly. You will notice these 3 washers we use on the driver's side of this Pro R. Now sometimes those little thin metal tabs are bent. They're so flimsy, they're easy to move. We put 3 washers in there so it allows the door to open without hitting that fender. And so we don't want to mess up the paint or screw up that fender by opening the door and plowing that door into that fender. And so that gives us that ability to do that without trying to bend tabs or make something funky. We just put a couple washers in there and it works out great. Some of the cars need them, some don't. Depends on especially if it's been rolled over. You might need a new tab there. Sometimes you need a new panel if the panel's deformed, or sometimes a couple washers will solve your issue. Anyways, that's it for the install. Guys, thanks for buying TMW doors. Appreciate the business. Hopefully you love them as much as we do.